Hi, I'm Andy Adams, editor at Canadian Yachting Magazine, and with me today is Drew Robertson of Skippers Plan Insurance. Drew, good morning.
Hi, Andy. Glad to be here.
Great to have you, because there's a really important question, something I never thought of, that I learned a little bit about recently, and it's something that could affect any boater. Something that could happen if you were, something as simple as if you were to run out of fuel on a windy day, maybe hit a rock by accident in some place that you're not familiar with. Doesn't have to be an engine breakdown, doesn't have to be a big storm. Something could go wrong and your boat could be disabled. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but once in a while it happens. And the issue is, what if you were to land on the rocks, land on the shore of an island someplace? What if there's a storm that's maybe forecast for later in the day? So these are questions that have to do with towing and salvage, and some very important differences if you were to call for a rescue versus what turns out to be a salver. So Drew, where do we start on this discussion? How do we draw the distinction between towing and salvage, and what happens?
Yeah, the distinction is really there's a very fine line between what is considered a towing operation and what's considered a salvage operation. And a lot of boaters don't understand the difference and find themselves in a situation where they're receiving a large bill for a salvage operation that they thought was a tow. There's a couple things you need to consider. Factors that have to come into play in order for it to be considered a salvage operation. The first is that it has to involve a marine property like a boat. The next is that property must be in peril. So that means that there must be some danger. The danger does not have to be immediate. It may be a danger that is going to occur into the future. So you might see a boat that is on a sandbar that normally to take that off would be a towing operation. If there is a storm forecast, that can cross the line and become a salvage operation. The next consideration is that the service that's received must be voluntarily rendered. Now, all that means is that the person who is doing the rescuing does not have a professional obligation to provide that service. The Navy or the Coast Guard being two examples.
So that's a different thing. In other words, not a commercial operation.
A salvage can be conducted by either a professional salvage company or by any passing boater who is a private individual. Sometimes the worst situations start out with someone coming alongside and saying, "Throw me a line and I'll pull you off." And of course you think that they're offering a service for free, and you can find out that can get very expensive. The last thing that is required in order for a salvage to be, for a tow to become a salvage, is that there must be success in the operation. So the boat must either be completely saved or partially saved. Now, a professional salvage company that comes along and spends 10 hours rescuing a boat only to find out that there is so much damage to the boat that it is a total loss would not be entitled to receive any award whatsoever. So they are taking some risk to be out on the water providing the service for boaters as well.
Isn't that interesting? So really, this is an important issue in my opinion, because when a person who's never had a problem, probably been boating their whole lives, never ran out of fuel in an unfamiliar place where they started to drift towards the rocks or whatever it is, and somebody comes along and offers some help, instinctively you're going to grab that help right away without really thinking about what the implications of it are.
That's correct. Now, a prudent skipper is always going to inquire before taking a line from a boat, is this a tow or is this a salvage operation? There is no obligation on the boat owner to accept the first company that comes along. And depending on the situation, you might be in a position to hire a boat to come from shore and provide a service based on an hourly fee to tow you back to the dock or to deliver fuel or whatever the case may be. And it's going to be much less expensive than if it becomes a salvage. The worst, as I say, the worst situation is when you don't ask and you make an assumption that it is just a simple tow.
So that's the key question, is you have to say, is this a tow or a salvage operation?
That's correct. Some salvage companies are going to ask you to sign a contract.
Okay.
In fact, if you're unsure, it is always best to have an open discussion and try and come to some verbal agreement. Of course, in the circumstances, that's not always possible.
Yeah, that's an interesting part of it, isn't it? Because, if the vessel actually is in peril, and your life may be in peril, you're being banged up and down on the rocks and the waves and things, hard to stop and say, could I please see the contract?
Oh yeah, certainly if there's any lives at risk, that's always the first consideration, that you're never expected to risk life to save a boat. That's why you have insurance on the boat. And the other thing is, if you do not accept assistance when the boat is in peril and it's smashing up on the rocks, the insurance company may take a very dim view of that after the fact and could actually be in a legal position to deny the claim if your negligent behavior in refusing assistance resulted in a total loss.
Right, so it's not an easy situation. So what's the best way, I guess, it's to avoid being in peril at all?
Well, that is certainly one way to protect yourself. The best way is to have a good marine insurance policy that provides coverage, whether it is a tow or a salvage operation. A lot of people just get upset. They feel that they have been misled or being ripped off by a salvage company when instead of a tow that would cost $200, they're presented with an invoice for $25,000 for a salvage operation. But
Huge
it is
difference.
covered under a marine insurance policy.
So even if you saw an astronomical bill like that, that policy might still cover it.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so that is the good news.
Yes, it's not that you're at immediate risk of financial loss, but it just becomes a situation where boaters feel that they've been mistreated by these operations. And even with professional companies that provide towing services under contract, I'm not going to pick one out, but it's just as an example, like Boat US. So you might have a contract with them and they come out because you're on a sandbar and they render assistance to you, and you think that that's included in your annual fee that you've paid, only to find out that you're presented with a large salvage bill because it's not considered a tow. The contract is for a towing service, not for a salvage. So the first step to take in that case is always to contact the insurance company and report the incident.
Something to think about as we head towards boating season. My advice to anybody, I guess, would be before you go anywhere or do anything, make sure that your insurance policy is a good marine insurance policy, that you know what you've got in the way of coverage, and then make sure that the boat is full of fuel and has proper safety checkout and so on before you set out. You still can't cover every variable, but try not to let this be a stupid mistake. You can possibly avoid it, and then know what your rights are and what the circumstances are, and just ask that one key question, I guess. Would that solve it?
That's correct, yes.
Fantastic. Drew, thanks so much for joining us today. This is something that I think a lot of people are probably not focused on, and if you already knew, share the information with a friend. Drew, thanks so much.
Pleasure for being here, Andy.